Welcome. This is a data visualization course. This course will teach you how to make all these visuals using your own data. You will learn how to create animated charts from scratch without writing a single line of code. The only thing you need to have is a Windows 10 or a Windows 11 laptop. You will learn how to visualize data using a software called CLUBASID. CLUBASID is a visualization software that is very easy to use and understand. So what are you waiting for? Why not enroll now? Open up the Microsoft Store app. The Microsoft Store app comes with all Windows 10 and Windows 11 systems. When it's open, just search for CLUBASID. Click on the free version. Then install the free version. So, this is what CLUBASID looks like. When you place your mouse over any of these at the top, you will see a description of what the button actually does. You can see the pie chart button here opens up pie chart. You see this upper panel on the left? This will help us import our data into CLUBASID. The row below that, the one that has the clock icon and the calendar icon. This is where we would configure time interval, in the form of years, months, days, and so on. The panel on the bottom left would show our imported data in tabular format. Now, this panel here at the bottom center is where our animations will be controlled. On the right, we can see a mini graph. This is basically a small line chart. On the bottom right, we will display all the attributes. You will see what attributes mean in the next video. The drop-down on bottom right here has two options, global and local. We would see what that does in future videos. So, stay tuned. Entities, attributes, and time. What do these mean? When we talk about entities, we can be referring to countries, people, and so on. In this example, we have Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, and Tunisia. For attributes, we would have things such as GDP, population, gross national income. When we talk about time, we are simply referring to a particular period. It could be a year, a month, or a day. For this example, we could say 1960, 1962. Another example, entities could be names of people such as Tunde, John, Emeka. Their attributes could be height, weight, and salary. That's it for this lecture. I will see you in the next. The first data model we would be looking at is a data model called attribute over time. This is what it looks like. This file shows the GDP of Nigeria in billions of dollars from the year 1960 to 2020. You can see that the first line contains the name of the attribute, which is GDP. Every other line that follows would contain the GDP of Nigeria in a particular year. So the second line shows the GDP of Nigeria in 1960, the third line shows the GDP for 1961, and so on. Notice how we do not see the years such as 1960, 1961, and so on. This is because we would configure all of that inside the software. Let us use another example. Let us add two attributes, weight and salary. Now let us input the weight at a given time. Also make sure all the values are numeric. So we cannot add something like kg at the end of the 34. So we can input weight and salary for the next month or next year or next week, depending on the time interval we want. This is how the attribute over time model works. That's it for this lecture. I will see you in the next. In this lecture, we would be looking at the attribute over entity model. The first line has the name of all the attributes. Every other line after the first will contain the name of the entity as well as the values for each attribute. The names of the attributes are League, Cup, Continental, and Country. The name of the entities are Cristiano Ronaldo, Pele, Romario, Messi, and Puskas. Do not put a header for the entities. For example, do not put something like players here. Just follow this format. From the data shown, we can see that Cristiano Ronaldo has 479 league goals and 51 cup goals. We can input in another example. Let us have two attributes, weight and salary. And let us create entities and their values of weight and salary. Now, if we are interested in showing this data for multiple years, we could save this file as the name of a particular year. For example, we could save this as 2007.csv. Then make some changes to the data and save this as 2008.csv. So in an attribute over entity model, every file can represent data for a particular point in time. That's it for this lecture. I will see you in the next. In this lecture, we would be looking at the last model, which is the time over entity model. So the first row will contain different times. The next row, just like the ones after, will have the name of the entity and the values for each year. The name of this file will be the name of the attribute. For example, salary.csv. That's it for this lecture. I will see you in the next. Make sure you download the file that is attached to this lecture. The model we would be using for this lecture would be the attribute over entity model. On the left panel, come to this drop-down here and select the attribute over entity model. Make sure it is automatic. We would not be dealing with manual models in this course. Press the Enter Data button. Use the File dialog to select the data from your computer. Okay, now, we have imported our data successfully, and you can see it in the table on the left. Click on this drop-down to see the names of all the attributes. Then click on this drop-down to see the names of all the entities. Come to the top and click on the pie chart button to open up the pie chart window. What we see here are the combined values for all the entities. So for example, the league value sums up the league goals scored by all the players. This is the same with cup and the other attributes. Now, if we want to see the values for a particular entity, we would come down to the bottom right and change this value from global to local. And select whichever entity you want. So we are currently seeing data for all the attributes. What if we want to see the league goals or the cup goals scored by each player? To do that, we would click on the pie chart icon here. Make sure it is set to entity-based. Then select the attribute you want to compare. Now press the Update button. So what you are seeing here is Ronaldo's league goals, Messi's league goals, Pele's league goals, and so on. And we can do the same for the other attributes. We can easily make this a donut chart by clicking on the drop-down here and selecting the donut option. You can hide details panel if you want. You can toggle this text on or off. That's it for this lecture. I will see you in the next. Hello, using the same data as the previous lecture. We want to use the bar chart in this lecture. So click on the bar chart button. Just like we did in the pie chart, we can view data for a particular entity. All we need to do is come down here and change this to local. Then select the entity that we want. Okay, so let us switch back to global to view the combined data. So to look at the league goals for each player, we can simply click on this icon and set this to entity based and make sure this drop down here is set to league. We can sort the bars based on values. And we can do that in ascending or descending order. If you want all the bars to have the same colors, then check Uniform Colors and select the color you want. Adjust the bar size and spacing if you want. That's it for this lecture. I will see you in the next. In this video, we would be looking at a chart in CLUBASID called a multi-entity graph. Click on this button here to open up the multi-entity graph. So this is really interesting. Let us click on this icon here and let us check Show Labels. As you can see here, if you add up all the goals for Ronaldo, League, Cup, Continental, Country, you get a total of 785. And we are doing the same for Pele, the same for Messi. If we want to remove a particular attribute, for example Cup goals, we can. Now we are simply seeing only League goals, Continental and Country goals. Okay, so let us remove Continental. Now Pele is number 1. If we just add League and Country goals. Also, check this easy toggle to sort from lowest to highest. Let us check this 100% toggle. So if we look at Pele and we want to compare his League and Country goals only, we can see that more than 83% come from League goals. So if we want all those attributes to come back, we just come here and click on the refresh button down here. We could adjust the bar sizes if we want. We could adjust the spacing between the bars. We will look at swap speed later on, when we are doing animation. Color padding is basically shifting these labels to the right or left if we want. And color size. Also, we are currently coloring by attributes. We could simply change this to color by entity, and each player here would have a different color. That's it for this lecture. I will see you in the next. We will look at group bar chart, which is really easy to understand. So, look for group bar chart here, click on it. You can see everything is set up for you. So you have all your entities here and their attributes. Another thing you can do here is increase the bar size and the spacing. Just like we saw in the previous lecture, you can adjust color padding and size. That's it for this lecture. I will see you in the next. So we would look at spider chart in this lecture. So click on the spider chart button to open up spider chart. So, there is so much going on here. Let us remove the entities we do not want to see by clicking on the entities that we do not want. So let us click on all the players and leave Ronaldo and Pele. This chart is really useful when you want to compare multiple attributes of two entities, like we are doing here. So you are not necessarily interested in the exact value, you just want to see which entity has more of a certain attribute. So we can see that Pele has more league goals and Ronaldo has more of the rest. So let us click on this icon and click on the Show All Entities button to bring back all entities. Let us hide the others and leave Ronaldo and Messi, so we can compare the goals for Ronaldo and Messi. So do the same for other entities. That's it for this lecture. I will see you in the next. Make sure you download the files attached to this lecture. In this section, we will be using the attribute overtime data model. We will also look at animated charts in this section. So come here and select the attribute overtime automatic. We would be visualizing data for different countries. Data like GDP, population, etc. Click on the Enter Entity button. When the file picker window pops up, select all the files you want to bring in and press Open. So now that we have imported our data in, let's see. Over here we have year, life expectancy, GDP and population as our attributes. Click on this drop-down to see all entities. From Australia all the way to South Africa. You see this attribute called year is actually redundant, so we would end up removing it because as you would see, we will set up the years using CLUBASID. So this drop-down, beside the clock icon, click on it and change it to years. Let us then click on the icon and change the start year to 1960. Close the window. As you can see on this small table here, the year attribute is irrelevant. So let's remove it by making sure that year is selected here and pressing this cancel button. Now click on this button that says multi-value over time. We can play our animation by pressing down spacebar or clicking on this start button on the bottom left. So if we come down here, we can increase the speed of our animation. If you place your mouse cursor on this center panel, you can use your mouse scroll wheel to change the scale of this graph. So let us play the data again. Also, we can drag this time slider back and forth as we would in a video player. This is how we can view data changes over time. We are currently looking at the attributes. So if we want to see GDP for different countries, let us make sure this is entity-based and select GDP as the attribute. That's it for this lecture. I will see you in the next. In this video, we would be doing a typical race bar chart. In these types of graph, we usually have images for each entity. Come to the top right and click on this button that says Map Image to Entity. Click on this Add button here. And let us click on this Add Image button to add the Australian flag saved on your computer. Do the same for all the other entities. Let us leave just the GDP value and remove the rest. Let us check Show Icons to show the flags. If we press the Start button, this is what we would get. If this speed is too fast, simply come down here to slow the pace. Like I said before, we can move this timeline around. We can also come here to show labels. Now, if we look down here, we can see the current year. There is also another way we can see the current year, and that is by clicking on the time panel on the top right. We can use our mouse to drag this text around. If we to hide the text, we can simply right-click on the text. So click on Time Panel again and drag it up here. Swap speed here affects the speed on the bar swapping. We can come here and press the refresh to reset the scale and bring back all attributes. Let us do for population this time around. And press play. So see you in the next lecture. In this lecture, we would be learning about a chart in CLUBASID called 4D chart. Some other software may refer to this as bubble chart. It is called 4D because it uses the x-axis, y-axis as well as size and color. Click on the 4D icon. Leave x-axis to be life expectancy. Y-axis should be set to GDP. Size axis should be population. This means that bigger nodes on the graph will represent high population. Color axis is basically a spectrum from blue to red. Blue represents low values and red represents high values. To make this look better, let us reduce the maximum bubble size and press the update button. So under color, if we change this to GDP, which is what the y-axis is, and press the update button, you will see the color spectrum shows blue for low GDP and red for high GDP. Now this is the summed up data for all countries. If we want to see the plot for a particular country, then we come down here again and change this to local, then select the country we want to see. Let's select Australia. Let's select Nigeria. So let us go back to global. Now what you see is data over time. Meaning that each of these nodes here represent data in a particular year. If we want each node here to represent an entity, we would change this drop-down from time rep to entity rep. So every node you see now represents a country. So let us increase the maximum bubble size to see this better. Then press the update button. When we drag this time slider around, we can see the magic happening. The bigger nodes represent countries with huge population. Look at the size axis here. So let us drag the time slider back and press the start button for animation. So see you in the next lecture. In this lecture, we would be learning about the waterfall chart. Time series. Click on the waterfall button. Click here and select an attribute. Let's select GDP. And we want to see from 1960 to 2020. You can adjust bar size and spacing if you want to. So what you are seeing here in increment and decrement for a particular year. The green is showing there was an increase and the red is showing a decrease. Also remember that this is global, which is showing the summed up values for all the entities. If we change this to Nigeria and click on the update button, we can see the data for only Nigeria. So you can see that is 1981, there was a huge boost, about $100 billion. In 2009 we can see that the GDP fell by about $45 billion. So this is the end value of $432.3 billion. So we can do the same for any other country we want. So see you in the next lecture. In this lecture, we would be looking at the static graph, which is basically a line chart. Click on the static graph button. Then click here. Set x-axis to time and y-axis to GDP. So if we press update, we can see the GDP over time of all these countries. If we want to select only a few countries, we can come here and remove the ones we do not want to see, then press update. We can also highlight values by placing the mouse over. We can animate this chart if we want to, by checking the Animate toggle. And when you press the Start button or drag this timeline, you can see the graph responding accordingly. So we are revealing sections of the graph based on the current time. For Animate to work, the x-axis has to be time. So we say, change x-axis to life expectancy. Then the Animate would not work. So back to time. We can fill the graph to create something like an area chart. So if we check Animate and Fill Graph, then we get this. We can also adjust the dot size and line width. Also, change the background, if we want. Lastly, when you highlight a line here, if we want to show all lines properly, we can just remove the mouse cursor from this panel, like this. So see you in the next lecture. In this lecture, we would be looking at the 3D spatial graph. So click on the 3D spatial graph button. Drag this panel to the left here. Change x-axis to time, y-axis to GDP, z-axis to population. For now, leave color and size axis set to life expectancy. Press the Update button. Use the mouse scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Hold down your mouse scroll wheel to move the camera. If we press Update, we do not see anything unless we press the Start button or move this time slider. If we do not want this animation effect, we can simply uncheck the Animate toggle here. Why 3D graph is useful is that it allows us to easily see the relationship between multiple attributes. Look at the mini graph on the right here. Change the x-axis to time and the y-axis to GDP just like in the 3D graph. Then press the Update button and we can see the similarities. If we change this to the right view and press the Reset Camera button, now we can see the relationship between GDP and population. We can do the same on the mini graph, but first let us look at the top view, which is showing population over time. Let us do the same on the mini graph. So we see how this 3D graph shows us the relationship between multiple attributes. Hold down the right mouse button and move your mouse to change the camera angle. If we want to see the data for a specific entity, then we change the drop-down to Local and select the entity we want to see. Each node on the graph represents data for a particular year. If you want each node to represent a country, then change this from time rep to entity rep. Then set the x-axis to life expectancy. So if we zoom in, we can see that each node represents a country. Also, if we drag our timeline, we can see the X, Y, and Z axis actually dictating the movement of the nodes. Also, we can see that life expectancy dictates the color and size for each node. So here, the small blue node represents Nigeria, which represents a relatively low life expectancy, compared with, say, Australia or Canada, which have bigger and red nodes. If we change the color drop-down to population, we can zoom in here and see population in Australia is relatively low, hence the blue node. Also, if we zoom in, we can see countries like Bangladesh and Nigeria with high population. We can use these other toggles to show and hide other things in the graph. So we can see that node color type is a spectrum. So from blue to red, low to high. We can also color by category. And we will see how to do that later on. So see you in the next lecture. In this lecture, we would be looking at the data correlation graph and how linear regression is done in CLUBASID. This lecture is not an introduction to the concept of linear regression. It is assumed that you already have an idea on how linear regression works. So click here on data correlation. We can check the correlation between GDP and time. Time on the x-axis and GDP on the y-axis. Click on Update Graph. We can see the best fit line as well as the equation of the best fit line. We can also look at the R and R squared value. To reiterate, you need to already understand how linear regression works. So we can click here and change this from GDP to population. Like we've always done, we can come down here to see the plot for a particular country. Like we have already seen, each node here represents data for a particular year. If we want each node to represent data for a particular country, then we would change this to entity. Now each node here represents a particular country. You can change these attribute values if you want. You can also come here and toggle this off. We change this back to time rep. Show the line and show equation. So see you in the next lecture. Okay, so let us create a new project. In this section, we would be setting up super entities and categories. And we would be revisiting the 4D chart in this lecture. So change this to attribute over entity automatic. Click on the Enter Data button. And import the data that is attached to this lecture. The data is about artists versus engineers. This is the data we were trying to import. And this is what we get. Can you see that every value under occupation is 0? This is because engineers and artists are not numeric value, so 0 is put in place of non-numeric values. So let's go to File and then New Project to restart things. Select Attribute over Entity Automatic, and before you press the Enter Data button, come here to the top right. Click on the String Replacement button. Click on Add Row. And let us replace the word engineer with 0. Press the Add button. Then add another row and let us replace every artist with 1. Press the Add button. Now let's press the Enter Data button and import that same data. Open up the big table and now we know that every 0 represents engineer and every 1 represents artist. So John is an engineer and Fred is an artist. Now click on Action and select Set up Super Entities. So super entities are basically a group of entities. Now press this green Add button. And change this to engineer. Engineers are entities with occupation equal to 0. Now select a color for that. So press the Add button again, and this time change this to artist. Set to green color and occupation equal to 1. Simple as that. So close this panel. So open up the 4D chart, change this to entity so that each node will represent an entity. Make x-axis age, y-axis salary, size axis weight and leave color axis to occupation. What we see here is not the category color, but rather the spectrum color, where blue represents low value and red represents high value. Because we set engineer to a value of 0 and artist to a value of 1, that's why you see this color. To see the category color, let us change this to color by category. And press the update button. So this is how you apply categories to 4D charts in CLUBASID. So see you in the next lecture. In this lecture, we want to see how we can apply categories to raise bar chart. So let's come here and change this to color by category and remove all these attributes aside salary. As we can see, all top earners are engineers. So see you in the next lecture. In this lecture, we would be looking at the population pyramid chart. So click on population pyramid. Click on this icon. So we are going to set up categories here. We would not be using the super entities for this chart. This is really similar to how the super entities work. Where occupation is equal to 0, let's call it engineers and select a color. Where occupation is equal to 1, let's call it artist and select a color. Main attribute is the attribute that we want to compare. So select age. Change this to 6 rows, or pick any number you want. Now press the update button. You can see here that from the ages 12 to 23, there is just one engineer. From the ages 36 to 47, we have 2 engineers. Also we have 2 artists from ages 24 to 35. We can also adjust the row sizes. You can also see that we have 6 rows. Feel free to change that number, but know that it would change the ranges. So you can toggle these values. You can also change the colors. And press update. See you in the next lecture. In this section, we would be looking at features that are exclusive to the Pro version of CLUBASID. The Pro version is very similar to the free version. The Pro features include map chart, we can also change the colors in our chart and fully customize the chart. Something we cannot do in the free version. If you come to the menu bar here, notice we have a menu called More Chart. Click on it and see that we have 14 additional charts. Another thing you can do is to save your project and also open a saved project. So see you in the next lecture. In this lecture, we want to look at how to change colors in our charts. To demonstrate this, let us simply generate random data. You could import data if you want, but this would be an opportunity to see how to generate random data. Click on the Generate Random Data button here. Let us adjust for attributes, entities, and time. Then press Generate. So what has happened is that pseudo-random data has been generated for 3 entities with 4 attributes. So open up PyChart. If you click on the attribute drop-down on the left, you will see the list of attributes. We start counting from index 0. So attribute 0 is index 0, attribute 1 is index 1, and so on. So come to the top right and open this color panel here. Under index 3, let us click on the color bar and change it to this color. If we update this pie chart here, and make sure it's attribute based, we can see that the color for attribute 3 has changed. So that's how you change colors. And you can see that it reflects on the bar chart as well. If you want to change the color for attribute 2, we can do it in the color panel. And see the difference. So let us use this to highlight a value. Open up the color panel. Set all the colors from index 0 to index 4 to blue. But leave index 1 to be red. We can see attribute 1 highlighted. And even if we sort bars, we will always know where attribute 1 is. So if you have a lot of entities or attributes and you want to know which index an entity or attribute is, go under Action menu and click Search Data Index. You can search for an entity or attribute. Then enter the name of the entity. You can also change this to attribute. If we click on Spider Chart, we can see the new colors are reflected as well. So see you in the next lecture. In this lecture, we'll briefly cover chart customization. So open up the pie chart. So let's make these colors different. Go back to pie chart. Now let us make this pie chart panel ready for export. Right-click on this pie chart icon to hide it. Do the same for this close button. Hold down Ctrl and click on the pie chart text. Change the text to whatever you want. So click on where the pie chart button should be. We can change a lot of things like background color, text on the pie chart, and so on. We can use this toggle to hide details panel. Now we cannot see our heading, so hold down Ctrl. And click on where the heading is and change the color to something different from the background color. So see you in the next lecture. So let us quickly customize another chart. Open up the bar chart. Add some spacing to the bars. Uncheck sort bars. So watch as I change all of these colors. Also right-click on each of these to hide them. So hold down Ctrl. Click on the header and make some changes. So see you in the next lecture. So, we want to export this chart. And it is very simple. Under Actions, go to Screen Capture and click on it. Once the dialog pops up, choose where you want to store this file. That's how simple it is to export chart. Now if you want to add some effect like inverting the color of this chart before you export. Under Action, click on Capture Settings and change this to Invert All. Then export your chart by clicking on Capture Screen, save your file, and when you open it, you will see that all colors have been inverted. So see you in the next lecture. Make sure you download the data attached to this lecture. Change this to Attribute Over Time Automatic. Press the Enter Entity button. When importing them, make sure you select all of them. The data we would be looking at is the average temperature in all Nigerian states. Now that our data has been imported, let us change this to months. Click on the Calendar button and change the start year to 2022. So click on this Map Chart button here and change this to Map of Nigeria. We can toggle the map on and off. So temperature is our current attribute. Now we are going from green to red, where green represent the lowest values and red represent the highest values. No data color represents sections on the map you do not have data for. So let us start adding rows. Now we are simply mapping entity names to states on the map. So if I come here and change the name of this entity and press the Auto Assign button, it would find a state with the same name as this entity. Okay, so let us keep adding rows and make sure the entity and state names match. Now press the Update button. Hold down your mouse scroll wheel to move this map around. Also roll your scroll wheel to zoom in and out. Now drag this one down a bit. Click on the Color panel and change the background color. Click on the Time panel and drag the time text down here. Now press the Start button on the bottom left. Click on the Action menu and add floating text. Drag it up here, now hold down Ctrl and click on the text to edit it. We can edit the time text as well. Notice that we cannot change the time text itself. But we can change the way it looks. We can also add images. Under Action, click on Add Floating Image. Drag this down here, hold down Ctrl and click on the image. Click on Upload Image and select the flag image. We can change dimensions, size and angle. Now, another way we can color this map is by category. So let us simply set up two super entities. Under Action, click on Set up Super Entities. Add Super Entities. Name one hot and the other cold. Any region with a temperature above 30 is hot. Then select a color, and any region with a temperature below 31 is cold. Click on Map Chart and change this to color by category. So this is another way we can color the map. So if we go back to Spectrum, we can change this to blue. That's it for this lecture. So see you in the next lecture. In this lecture, we would be looking at the travel route chart. Click on the map chart icon, select the map you want. Click on this airplane icon here. Now this chart is useful if, for example, you want to use a chart to show places you plan on visiting. So click on Add Rows. Each of these rows added are places we would like to visit. So I am just going to pick random countries. Uncheck this Close on Play toggle down here so that this panel does not close when we press play. Now press this play button. So as you can see, we are visiting each of these places. Press the stop button and let us increase the play speed, reduce the connect line width and change these colors over here. Now press play, see the difference. If we uncheck this Animate camera toggle, then the camera would not be following. You can increase the font size to make the names of the countries bigger. So let us check Animate camera and change the cam zoom. See the difference. If we remove any of these routes, we would not visit them anymore. So that's it, and I'll see you in the next lecture. In this lecture, we would be looking at a very basic flowchart. Under the More Charts menu, click on Flowchart. We can add different shapes and lines. So change this to terminal and add shape. When you place your mouse over the shape, we see this. And we can reduce the size if we want. Right-click on the shape to remove it. So let us add the shape again. And reduce it a bit. Hold down Ctrl and click on the shape to edit the text. Change this to start. Add a down arrow. Reduce the size and drag it here. Hold down Ctrl, click on the line and delete the text. Now change this to decision and add shape. Hold down Ctrl and click on it to edit the text. Add a right arrow and place it here. Add a down arrow, shrink the size. Hold down Ctrl and click on it to change the text. Then place it here. So that's the basics. You can create more complex flowcharts if you want. In this lecture, we would be looking at word chart. Click on Generate Random Data button. Feel free to import data if you want. Let us generate random data with 18 entities and 2 attributes, then click on Generate. Under the More Charts menu, click on Word Chart. You can see that the bigger text represents bigger values. Also, let us move them apart from each other by holding the left mouse button on them and moving the mouse. This chart is really useful when visualizing things such as most popular names. You can place your mouse over any of the text. And use your mouse scroll wheel to rotate the text. Also notice that each of the text are going from green to red, which means that the bigger text are red and the smaller ones are green. So let us click here. Main attribute is the attribute that decides the size of the text based on value. You can change this color type to constant for a uniform color, and select the color you want. You can change this back to variable and select which attribute would determine the color for a particular text. So that's it, and I'll see you in the next lecture. In this lecture, we would be looking at variable difference chart. Make sure you download the file attached to this lecture. This is the data we would be looking at. It shows gender distribution in different undergraduate disciplines at some Nigerian universities. The two entities are male and females, and the attributes are the different departments. Also note that these numbers are in the thousands. Click Enter Data button and fetch your file. Now let us load images for each entity. So let us add images. Now under More Charts, select Variable Difference Chart. Click on this icon here. Make sure it is set to entity-based because we want to compare our entities. Set variable 1 to males and set variable 2 to females. Press Update. So red bars show there are more males in some departments, and the green bars show there are more females in some department. We can reduce the bar size. We can also reduce the font for these departments here. Under Rows Title, reduce the size. Also, let us uncheck Show Text. Let us go to Rows Divider. Scroll all the way right and look for the X button, which gives a transparent color. Click on it. And now, we have removed those lines. Now this chart looks cleaner. So that's it. So that's it for now. We have looked at visualization using CLUBASID. You now have the basic skills to create different charts, and also make animated charts without writing any code. Feel free to ask questions if you want to know more about visualization in CLUBASID.